Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. Thanks for joining us. If you've been with us before, thanks for joining us again. We are always happy to have you over and over again. We love that you come back. And if this is your first time joining us, we're glad to have you. We're excited to have you join us today. My name is Jervy Canlas. I'm one of the two program coordinators for the Empowering Financial Wellness Program. Joining me today is my colleague Vincenza. You're going to hear from her as well today. We also have Christy Lynn. She is going to be in the chat today. If you have any questions or you want to share something in the chat, go ahead and do that later. And first off, please put your name on the chat and where you're tuning in from. We'd love to know where you're joining us from. So if you could do that in the chat, that would be great. This webinar is brought to you by Utah State University Extension in partnership with the Utah Department of Workforce Services. So today we are going to talk about cleaning up your credit. We are in a what we call a spring cleaning series this April. The first two webinars that we've had were on organizing your finances and debt elimination. So today we are going to talk about cleaning up your credit, checking for errors and how to correct those. But first, let's start off with a quick true or false poll. We have 3 true or false questions. Would be nice if you'd answer them and would love to see where we're at on these questions. Is it true that you can pull your credit for free once a week from all 3 major credit bureaus? Is it also true or false that checking your own credit report counts as an inquiry and therefore can temporarily lower your credit score? And the third one is paying off your debt immediately removes the debt from your credit report. So after you've paid off, say, a credit card or a loan, does that immediately remove that from your credit report? So true or false? Okay, our answers are coming in. We're waiting for one more person. Okay, we'll give it another maybe 30 seconds. We seem to have a consensus though for these answers. Okay, so let's see. So first, is it true or false that you can pull your credit for free once a week from all 3 major credit bureaus? As of today, this is true. Okay, you can actually pull your credit for free once a week from all 3 major credit bureaus. And that's because of the pandemic. So this is something that the credit bureaus have done because of our current situation. There's a lot of fraud going on and there's a lot of identity theft going on. So they did this so that you can check your credit reports for free once a week. Okay, before that, and by the way, this is valid. Okay, this is valid up until April of 2022. So they just extended it for another year actually. But previously, okay, normally under normal circumstances, you'd get 1 free credit report per year for each of the bureaus. So what usually would recommend you to do is to pull them up every quarter, 1 from each credit bureau every quarter, so that you get 1 for free from all the credit bureaus. But because of our situation right now with the pandemic and everything, you can pull your credit for free once a week from all 3 major credit bureaus. Okay, so the second one, checking your own credit report counts as an inquiry. That is true. It does count as an inquiry, but it's a soft inquiry. And because it's a soft inquiry, it does not affect your credit score. It does not lower your credit score. So this, you guys are right. This is false. Checking your own credit report does not lower your credit score. And then the last one, paying off your debt immediately removes the debt from your credit report. This is also false. Okay, so you guys are right. Since late payments, collection accounts, discharges, and bankruptcies and closed accounts can stay on your credit report anywhere between 7 to 10 years. Okay, so simply paying off your debt will not immediately remove it from your report. However, closed accounts with good history generally stay on your report longer than negative reports, negative information. So that actually improves your credit score. Okay, so great. So let's go ahead and talk about, we're going to cover at least 3 things today. We're going to learn about the 6 main components of your credit report. If you've attended one of our credit webinars in the past month, in March, I think we did share how to read your credit report, how to understand what's reported in there. So we're going to go over those information today as well. We're also going to learn about red flags that you need to watch out for on your credit report so that you're going to be able to recognize, okay, this information should not be here. This information looks off, and then that will trigger, an action on your part, and you'll know what to do to make sure that your credit report is not erroneous. And then to do that, we will teach you how to take action to correct those errors. How to go about doing a dispute and contacting the credit bureaus to make sure that these errors are corrected. Okay, because your credit report affects your credit score, which affects a lot of things that has to do with your finances. So the interest rates that you qualify for, the loan structures that you qualify for, many other financial implications. So we want your credit report to be error-free and to be factual, and so that you can be protected. Okay, so why you need to pull your credit report? If you haven't reviewed your credit report in the last year, pull all 3. Like we mentioned earlier, free. It's free once a week until April of 2022. In fact, we encourage you to do this because the truth is 75% of Americans have at least one credit card, but only 33% of Americans pull their credit report. So that's a big discrepancy there. So imagine if you haven't checked your credit report, or nobody has checked your credit report up until the day that you apply for a loan or try to get financing on a car or apply for a mortgage. Then all of a sudden there's errors there and you've never known, or you've been a victim of identity theft and you've never known. So if you haven't reviewed your credit report in the last year, pull all 3 reports. Okay. Pull your credit before initiating a loan. We've mentioned this very often. You don't have to wait for something to happen before you pull your credit report. We went during our debt consolidation webinar. We did mention that before you even apply for or consider a debt consolidation loan, check your credit report first, because the information there will have a lot of implications on, like I said earlier, the structure of the loan that you qualify for, your interest rates, and things like that. Also, when your credit application is denied, you are entitled to a free credit report. Okay, from the credit bureau that provided that report to the business that denied your application. Okay, so you are also entitled to a free credit report that way. So Vincenza now is going to talk about how to read your credit report so that you know what the sections are in your report and how to check for errors and where you would typically see those errors.
Right, so understanding your credit report. Now, depending on who you pull your credit report from, just understand that the format might be a little different. Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion have a slightly different format, but they all generally contain the same 6 main pieces of information. So the first thing you want to look at is your personal information, which has like your name. Sometimes usually your social security number only will show the last 4 digits. You want to look at addresses. You want to make sure there isn't any gross errors in any of that information. Yes, sometimes creditors accidentally spell your name wrong, maybe they get a letter wrong, but if you're a junior, a senior, first, a second, if you have a common name, you probably want to pay more attention here. Addresses, so if there is an address that's listed on there that you don't recognize, or a social security number that's on there that you don't recognize, that's a big red flag, because that means somebody's using your information. Somebody's maybe opened an account and is having statements mailed to a different address that you don't even know about. So it's important to look at that, all of that information. And if there's anything that's wrong, you can dispute it. The next thing you'd want to look at is your employer history. So again, if there are employers you don't recognize, that could be a red flag. Just remember, the only time an employer would be listed on here is, if you recall, when you complete a credit application, it'll ask you who's your employer, what's your income. So if you worked for somebody and that, say for 5 years, and you never applied for credit during that time, you may not see that address listed on your credit report. Consumer statements. So by law, we have the right to put a statement on our credit reports. It's typically limited, no more than 100 word statement. But if you had something that you wanted to explain, some kind of extenuating circumstance, you were, a victim of fraud, or you're going through a divorce, or you just lost a job and you're trying to, catch up on paying your bills, things like that. So it's a section that potential lenders may review to help clear up any concern that they have about your credit worthiness. So you have the right to do that. And typically you can just go online onto each of the 3 credit reporting agencies, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, and you can actually go online, you log in, you create an account with them, and you can go ahead and type that in there. The next section is your account information. So this is really important too. Some of the credit reports, like anything that's potentially negative, it'll highlight that first. It depends on which report you're looking at. But here's where you want to look at the specific details of your accounts, making sure you recognize all the accounts. Even if you are just an authorized user in an account, you're not actually a co or joint applicant, that information would show up on your credit report. I know we've had some webinar participants that said, hey, I didn't even know I was an authorized user on so-and-so's account. Because you may not even have the credit card or be using it, but any account activity or payment activity, if you are an authorized user, would show up on your credit report. So that could be a good thing, because if whoever you have the card with has great credit history, you get to enjoy, that good credit behavior. On the other end, if you don't want to be an authorized user and that person is not responsible with credit or is having difficulties paying, then you have to ask them to remove you as an authorized user. Public records. So as of now, years ago, there used to be a lot more information, like you could put tax liens, you could put other things on there. But right now, the only thing, you used to be able to put judgments and tax liens. Now, really the only thing that should be showing up in the public record section is bankruptcy. So obviously, if you've never filed bankruptcy, you shouldn't see anything there. And depending on the type of bankruptcy, just remember that it could stay from anywhere from 7 to 10 years, depending on the type of bankruptcy that you filed. And then the next section is where you would find your credit inquiries. So here's where some people get confused about the credit inquiries. So there's 2 types of credit inquiries. There's hard and there's soft. You'll hear them as a hard inquiry, hard pull, hard check, soft inquiry, soft pull, soft check. Basically, the difference is a hard inquiry is when you've actually applied for credit and you've given permission to give access to your credit reports. Now, even if you're not successful in obtaining that credit, that loan, that credit card, the inquiry would still show up. So here's where the red flags could show up. If you haven't applied for a credit or a loan and you see a hard inquiry pulled by somebody and you don't recognize it, again, that could be a red flag because perhaps somebody is trying to use your identity to open an account, even if they haven't been successful. So you'd want to follow up with that. And then a soft inquiry is also going to be listed, but softer inquiries are just when you check your own report, or maybe an employer is checking to do a background check, or a landlord. Those would be soft inquiries, and those don't count against your credit score. Hard inquiries do, and they will stay on your credit report for up to 2 years, and then they drop off usually automatically. A soft inquiry, again, but you also want to look at that, make sure you'll see when you pulled your own credit report, and you could pull your credit report as many times as you want, because you can pull them more and pay for it. I mean, you can get them free once a week, which I think is probably more than enough for most, but understand that even when it goes back to once a year, you could still pull your credit report more than once a year, but sometimes you have to pay for it, but it's getting easier and easier to get it for free. So that's why it's important to look at credit inquiries. Again, anything you don't recognize could be a red flag. So you'd want to follow up and dispute it. Okay, so we talked about the red flags to look for on all of these sections. Anything inaccurate, anything that you don't recognize, any late payments. If you've been really good about paying stuff on time and you see that it's been recorded as late, you'll want to follow up with that. Again, any public records, any unauthorized credit inquiries. Now, if you're shopping for a mortgage or a car loan, you might see multiple inquiries on your credit report, but if you do it in a short period of time, usually with a car loan, if you keep it within a 2-week period and you have multiple inquiries, it should only count as one. And then with a mortgage, usually if you keep those, most people are shopping around to try to get the best rate. So if you're doing that within a 30-day period, sometimes up to 45, again, it should only count as one inquiry. So you have the right to contact them and say, hey, I was just shopping for one car loan, or obviously most people are buying one car or one house at the same time. So you have the right to ask them to correct that. Because sometimes a car dealership will even pull your credit multiple times for the same transaction. So because it affects your credit score, you have the right to have them remove it and count it as just one inquiry if it's done in a short period of time. The other thing that you want to look at, if you see any thing on a credit report that has a debt collection agency, like you don't recognize what it is, and maybe it was an account that you had that was turned over to a debt collection agency. Sometimes creditors will do what's called a charge off. And so your debt will continue to collect. They'll continue to collect the debt either internally or they'll sell it to another collection agency. And they basically pick up where the original creditor left off. So understand that debts that go into collection can be resold many times. If one debt collector is not successful, they'll sell it for pennies on the dollar to the next person and see if they can, get any money off of that. So just be mindful of that and pay attention if you see anything like that, because again, it could have been an account that you never were even aware of that you had, and then that person just didn't pay it, and then all of a sudden it's showing up on your credit report. I did want to make mention of a law that is going to go in effect this fall. Debt collectors will now be able to contact consumers not just by phone call, but by email, by text message, and social media messages. And they don't even have to have your consent. So be careful. Just be aware that that looks like that's going to go into effect this fall. So talked about all the things, the red flags to look for. What if you do find something? First thing I would do is if you find an error on one of your credit reports, if you just pulled one, I would go ahead and pull the other two, because what's being reported on one credit report may not be reported on the other. So you want to make sure if there's an error, maybe it's just showing up on one and you're only looking at TransUnion, but it's showing up on Experian. You want to make sure that you catch that. So go through it, highlight anything, circle anything that looks weird so you go back and refer to it. The next thing you want to do is contact the business that's reporting, like it's a department store credit card. Call them, call their customer service, and if you see something that's wrong, you can initiate the dispute. You can also write letters or dispute the error with the credit bureau directly, whoever's reporting that. And you can go online and you can actually dispute that. If you ever dispute anything, make sure that you document everything. Sometimes you can dispute online. Sometimes they require you to actually send stuff by snail mail. There's a form you fill out. It depends on the credit reporting agency. Again, just make sure you don't send them originals of anything, send them copies if you have any supporting documentation. Sometimes you have to call them. Sometimes they won't accept your information online. And then if you're going to be sending them things, just keep it organized, either digitally, keep a folder, whatever dispute, or keep it in a file folder so you keep everything, who you talk to, write down the name, the date, everything that you talk, whoever you talk to. If they have an employee ID number, a lot of times they will ask for their, sometimes they don't give their first and last name, but maybe their first name and their employee ID number. You have to be diligent and patient when you're working with, sometimes it's a simple thing. Like I recently had a gross misspelling of my name, excuse me, on one of my credit reports, and I asked them to just remove it, because I have cousins in my family that there's 6 of us that have the same first and last name. So I just want to make sure that, I'm not getting confused. Sometimes they merge files, especially if you have a common name. So you want to make sure you take care of that. Just know that it doesn't happen very quickly. Once you initiate a dispute, by law, it's called the Fair Credit Reporting Act. The credit bureau actually has 30 days to respond to that dispute. And then once they find whatever it is that they find, they have 5 business days after they've settled the dispute to actually contact you. So if you don't hear anything from them for a while, I would follow up with a phone call or an email, just to make sure, like, where are they in the process? And I've disputed things multiple times. Sometimes I wasn't satisfied with what the answer I got, and so I disputed it again. Or you can elevate it and you can go to consumer.ftc.gov. We'll share the resource with you at the end of this webinar and as a follow-up email. They give you a procedure, what you need to follow. They give you samples of letters that you can send to dispute things. And remember how I said things, sometimes debt gets resold, or sometimes because of human error, you think you took care of something and then it pops up again. That happens because at many lenders, the department that's sending the data to the credit bureaus each month, it's not the same department handling the disputes. So it's like the one hand is not talking to the other one. And so sometimes that's why things pop up. So keep all of your documentation. Okay, so let's say you had an error and you were successful in correcting that error. That's awesome, but just you're not quite finished yet. If you applied for credit or a loan during that time when this was going on, I would recommend that you send revised versions of your reports to anyone who pulled your credit during the time that you were going through this. It's especially important if you were declined for a loan or you were quoted a much higher rate than you could have gotten. Because remember, your credit score is based on what's in your credit report. So if there's negative, inaccurate information on your credit report, it's going to affect your credit score, which can affect what types of loans you get, what kind of rate, your overall credit worthiness. Also, if a company provides the wrong information, if it was the company's fault and not yours, they have the right to forward that correction to that credit reporting agency and saying, oh, it was our error, please correct it on the consumer's report. I would continue to check your reports because you want to make sure the error doesn't pop up again. So take advantage of the once a week free. At a minimum, I would say pull it once a month, even if you're not having any issues. Why not? Especially during the pandemic, there's an increase in the amount of identity theft, fraud, etc. People are getting desperate. And then at a minimum, check them at least once a year from all 3. I don't know if they'll go back to just once a year. Who knows with the state of economy, if it's going to be free once a week for a while or maybe once a month, who knows. But just take advantage of checking them more frequently while you can, through April of next year. If after all is said and done, you're really having issues with anything getting removed and you're sure that it's not your fault, you can always escalate your situation. There's what's called the CFPB. It's the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. They are an advocate for consumers. There's actually a website where you can file a complaint. It'll take you step by step. Also, if you suspect that your a victim of identity theft, it's really important that you place a fraud alert on your credit cards. That's going to make it hard for people, even yourself, to apply for additional credit. There'll be some, if it's you, there'll be some additional steps that you would need to take in order to apply for credit. But it's really important that you put a fraud alert. And you can also freeze your credit reports. That's something that became free also in the last few years. Again, you go to each of the credit reporting agencies, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, and you can freeze your credit reports, which means that anytime you or somebody that's not authorized is trying to apply for credit, there's going to be some extra steps to take to thaw that credit report or to file or to apply for new credit. So again, it's just a way to make sure that the person that's really applying for the credit is you. And if you go through each of the websites, it'll take you step by step on what you need to do to freeze it and what you need to do to thaw your credit report so that a potential creditor could access your credit report. Okay, so a lot of information that we've just gone through. We will follow up with an email that kind of will spell out what we just talked about, because I realize it's a lot of information. But this is something that until you're in that situation, or you're just understanding what your rights are, it's important to know that there's actually a process in place to help you. So Jeremy is going to talk about the whole timeline of disputing something that's on your credit reports. And she's just going to give you an example of like a timeline going through, let's say, Experian.
Yeah, so just remember, the credit bureaus, they have a fairly similar dispute process, but they just have little nuances on how they want you to do it. So depending on who you're disputing the information with, you just have to make sure that you're following their directions. And if you go on each of these websites, dispute centers, they actually have a step-by-step guide. They do provide those information for you. So there's 3 ways you can dispute information on your credit report. One is, I guess the most convenient one nowadays is doing it online. So all these 3 major credit bureaus, they do have an online dispute center. That's your first that's the first thing they want you to try to do. Okay. This process, we got this from Experian, so it might be slightly different depending on, maybe you're doing it with TransUnion or doing it with Equifax, but with Experian, this is what the typical process is like. Also, you can also initiate a dispute over the phone, and you just have to call that number on your credit report, or do it through mail. So you just print out the dispute by mail instructions from their website, and there's the address will be there as well, and then you mail it to them. Okay, the timelines for these will be different depending on how you process the dispute, or depending on the information that they need from you. Okay, so it just varies that way. But say you do it online, you want to dispute something with Experian, this is what it typically looks like. So you go to their online dispute center and initiate a dispute. And then you would provide details of your dispute and upload necessary documentation. So what kind of the kinds of documentation you would provide would depend on what kind of dispute you are doing. So if you're just disputing personal information, say like Vincenza, her name is spelled wrong, or say your social security number has one digit off, or you just need to change your address or something like that, or the address is, it's misspelled, something like that. So for example, if it's your name, personal information, they might need you to provide a copy of your driver's license or your passport or any court documents that prove a legal name change. And we'll give you a quick guide on all of these in our follow-up email. If you if you filed for a name change and it's now reflected on a birth certificate, you might need to provide that. If you're now married, and you want to change that and into your married name, provide a marriage certificate with your married name. If you have a military ID, you might need to do that. You might not have to provide all these, but we're just giving you examples of what might count as a valid documentation for something that, for an information that you're disputing. So if it's your social security number that's wrong and you want to correct it, of course, your valid social security card, a copy of that will be very helpful. Sometimes a copy of your pay stub with your correct social security number would do, or a copy of your W-2 with your full social security number. For an address dispute, a driver's license or a government issued ID with the correct address, a copy of your rental or lease agreement, copy of your house deed, copy of your mortgage or bank statement, a utility bill, or a W-2 with the correct address. They're more likely to accept those proofs of documentation. Now, when it's your account information that you are disputing, that you might need to show more documentation about that. They might ask you to provide a copy of your current bank statement. What else? Letters from a lender or a creditor indicating that your account has been corrected with them. Proof of identity theft. If, for example, if you're a victim of identity theft, a police report might be something that you'd want to provide if you are disputing something in your account and you are a victim of identity theft. Bankruptcy schedules or other court documents. So things like that, if that's pertinent to your situation. Student loan letters, canceled checks, things like that. Sometimes you've already paid off your student loan and then it's still showing up there years later. If you have that letter from your lender or from whoever you borrowed that student loan from, that you've already paid it off, you'll have to have that copy so that you can provide that to the credit bureaus to prove that that loan has been paid off and it should not be showing there anymore. Because isn't there a time limit where it should still, where you can expect it to still be there, like 7 years, is it?
It can be up to 10 years.
10 years. So
Yeah,
it's been
even
years
after
it's still there.
Yeah. I would say my personal experience, if you pay off a loan, keep that forever.
Yeah, you'll never know.
I had that happen to me with a student loan. They trying to come after me when it's something that had been paid off years ago. So
yeah,
lesson learned.
Yeah. So if you have those, an official letter from the lender that this has been paid off, zero balance, things like that. My husband had to dispute, keeps popping up in his credit report that one time he forgot to, he had a late payment on a Home Depot card. And it's been forever and it keeps showing up. And we had to ask for proof that account is already closed and that there's no more balance on there. So just keep those in mind. Also, when you upload these documents, you can also include a dispute letter. They will have a box there where you can explain your situation, but it has a word limit. So if you are going for Experian, for example, if you go over 1,000 words, if you think you're going to use over 1,000 words to explain your situation, then you better just write a dispute letter and include that in the forms that you are uploading on the system. And of course, this is if Experian says, gives you a go in terms of, okay, we can do your dispute online. Because some credit bureaus would say, you have to do this through mail, the whole 9 yards through mail. And then you'll have to mail all those in through the mail. So just make sure that you are following the guidelines and the step-by-step instructions, depending on which credit bureau you're disputing an information with. Okay, and then, so this is a sample dispute letter that you can write. Like Vincenzo said, you could find this template on the Federal Trade Commission website. So you just, you write a letter, you write your name, your address, you address it to the complaint department, and you explain your situation, and you say, these are all the attachments and things like that. So we'll send you a link to this sample letter as well. And then you review and you submit your dispute. You let the dispute process play out. It might, like Vincenzo said, 30 days is what they are required by law to to take to start the process. But it could be a lengthy process. It could be cumbersome. It will test your wits. It will test your patience. And not a lot of people are, there are days when we don't have the time to be patient. But just remember that once your dispute is resolved, it will be worth it, because then you are confident that your credit information is safe and accurate and secure, and that you can initiate a loan, you can initiate and you can apply for a credit card, you can qualify for a certain interest rate that you want. And the credit bureau will send you a notice and display the outcome on your account. So the possible outcomes are added, updated, deleted, processed, or remains. So what this means are, so if they say, okay, the resolution is it's added, the information has now been added to your credit report. Okay. If it wasn't there before, that's why you disputed it. Now they've added it. Okay. Updated means that the information you disputed has been updated or it has been verified as accurate, but other information on your account unrelated to the dispute has been updated. Okay. So updated doesn't always mean a positive thing, because that could also mean, well, we verified it and now we're showing that we did, so we're just updating that that's what happened. And then there's also what most of us would hope for is that any erroneous information that's there would be deleted. So in this example, in this slide right here, there's plenty that was deleted. So I bet this person is extremely happy that that has been resolved in a very positive way. Sometimes it will show that it's being processed. What that means is the disputed information has been updated or deleted from your credit report. And then there's also this other outcome that's called remains. What that means is the company reporting the information has certified to the credit bureau that the information that you're disputing is actually accurate, so the item will not be changed. So just remember, when you're disputing or filing for a dispute, it does not have any direct impact on your credit score, but the results of that dispute can lead to changes in your credit score. If you're just changing any if you're just changing personal information, it does not affect your credit score at all. That has no standing whatsoever on your credit score. But if you're disputing negative information and the result of the dispute is that it's now corrected, either it's deleted or updated, it will actually improve your score. Because now it's either going to show, well, this person doesn't really owe this money, or this person is not what this credit report is saying about this person. So then that will improve your score significantly. Now, if you disagree with the outcome, you can, right, contact the information source. Again, we've mentioned this earlier, or add a statement of the dispute in your credit report. Okay, if you remember a few slides back, Vincenza showed you that portion in your credit report where you can add a statement. So you can do that. You could also dispute again with more relevant information. If maybe it was denied, or maybe it didn't go the direction you were hoping for because you weren't able to provide documentation that was enough for them to see, or that was enough to prove that it should be deleted, that something is there that shouldn't be there. Maybe you need to dispute it again. Or like we said, if all else fails and you really think something is wrong with your credit report, something is there that shouldn't be there, and that it wasn't you, you're sure that it wasn't you, you can escalate it to CFPB and or report as fraud through identitytheft.gov. So that's a lot of information. Like we mentioned, we'll send you all a quick guide on how to navigate the dispute process. We'll send you a copy of this presentation and a recording of it as well, so that you can rewatch it when or if you desire to do so.
And I just want to mention the point
Oh,
of,
go ahead.
yeah, just the whole point of, checking your credit report frequently is because the quicker you can find these, if there are areas, it's going to be a lot easier, the recency of it. It'll be easier to find the documentation or just catch, nip it in the bud before it becomes this thing that's gone on for years and years, et cetera. Like when I was trying to prove that I'd paid my student loan like 7 years ago, it was a little bit harder to gather the documents because the bank didn't keep the records. They toss records after 7 years. There's all these things. So it just behooves you to try to stay on top of it, especially with cyber threats and security and people's stuff online getting, compromised. We have to be so diligent. And we always say, nobody's going to care more about your financial stuff than you are. So we just want you to be empowered with the information that we've given you today and giving you some steps, because it can be daunting. It can be intimidating to try to go through, like you can feel overwhelmed. So at least you have a guideline to see, like, we hope this never happens to you, but it, like Christy Lynn mentioned in the chat, it's pretty common. Like 1 in 4 people will have some error on their credit report. And it could be a very small one. It doesn't have to be a major one, but some of it's human error and some of it's just, people trying to steal our identity. So there was a lot going on in the chat, which I think Christy Lynn did a great job of following. Were there any other questions that came up before we say our goodbyes that you wanted to ask about? We appreciate the questions. As usually, if you have a question, somebody else might be thinking the same thing. It's a great opportunity for us to share and to learn. So we'd love to hear. We'd love to hear your feedback. I challenge you to, if there's one thing that you learned today, is there a main takeaway or something that you didn't know before you attended this webinar? We'd love it if you throw it in the chat box and let us know something that you didn't know about before. Also, we'd love it if you'd fill out our survey. It's a really quick 2-minute survey. You can either scan the QR code. We also have the link to the survey here in the chat. Darren says he didn't know about free credit checks weekly. Yeah, a lot of folks don't know about that because it's not standard practice. It's something that they started actually last year, pretty quickly after the pandemic started. And then they decided, like I said, because of the increase in identity theft and fraud, that they decided to extend that, for another year. It was set to expire this month, but they went ahead and decided to extend that. So good stuff to know. Doesn't cost you anything. It's worth it. The hassle, it's just, trust me, been there, done that. It's worth it to just be diligent on that. And so if we are very thankful that you were able to join us today. This program is brought to you by grant funding, and we are required to report our work, and we'd love to be able to share what you are learning or you plan to do as a result of this class. And we always want to improve our courses. We want to make it relevant and interesting for you. So please, fill out the survey. It's really quick. If you enter the survey, you'll also be entered into a drawing. And you can enter a survey every time you attend a webinar. So we've had weekly webinars. And every time you enter, you get a drawing, entered into a drawing. So if you've attended all 4, for example, this month, you get entered 4 times to get some really cool swag from us. We hope that this was a great experience for you. We invite you to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Join us on the blog at utahmoneymoms.com. We've got 6 authors that contribute to that blog. We've always got great content. Great tips, tricks, everything personal finance related that we think is valuable for you. We'd love to have you again at one of our future webinars. If you'll go to finance.usu.edu/EFW, you'll see our classes for May. And then just a little sneak peek in June, we're going to be focusing on home buying. So be on the lookout for that. Again, thank you for being with us today. We hope you have a great rest of your day.